Okay, welcome back everybody to the final 3 talks of the first part. And as Pentti said, do keep making notes of questions, comments, things that you would like to ask any of the authors in the half an hour that we'll then have before lunch. So the first of our next 3 papers is from a team, and for the first paper in this team of presentations from the Peace Talk group at Oulu, we have Eera Rautiainen, Pentti Haddington and Antti Kamanen, and they will present 3 papers in various combinations, and the first one is over to you now, Eera.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I will be talking about using the team as a resource in radio communication. And this study is a part of my dissertation, where I examined practices of promoting and progressing collaborative work in military observer training. It is conducted as part of the Peace Talk project at the University of Oulu and in collaboration with the Finnish National Defence University, the Finnish Defence Forces International Centre and Crisis Management Centre Finland. And I will give a brief overview of the setting and the context and then present the main findings of the paper. So the physical setting of the study is United Nations Military Observer Training, where we have focused on patrolling exercises. The course prepares trainees for the future work in crisis areas. And the patrolling exercise is conducted in a made-up crisis area that is built in Niinisalo in southern Finland and is created from details in real past and present missions around the world. The teams consist of 2 to 3 trainees who work independently during the exercise, meaning that there is no instructor present in the vehicle. And in the course, the trainees come from around the world, and English is used as the working language and lingua franca. The data consists of video recordings and ethnographic observations, and the recorded interactions are then analysed in detail. The more precise context for this study is radio communication between the patrol vehicle and the net control station. And during the ongoing interaction over radio, other team members can hear the interaction, but they cannot speak to the net control station, as you can see on the figure here on the left. When the team members talk to each other in the vehicle and the transmit mode is not activated, the net control station cannot hear them, as you can see here on the right. This system allows for and makes possible negotiation within the vehicle during the ongoing interaction with the net control station, which in a way resembles the behind-the-scenes setting Liz was talking about earlier. In radio communication, fixed expressions are used to make the language clear and precise, and the expressions typically carry one meaning only. And in this study, we have focused on the phrase "say again," which has the meaning "repeat your last message." There's only one kind of expected response, which is a repeat of the message. And the repeat is expected to be full, if not otherwise indicated. It's typically triggered by problems of hearing or understanding, which can be caused by, for example, a poor radio connection, hearability issues, or unclear talk. But in training context, sometimes it's treated as corrective by the trainees, meaning that repeating the message is not seen as a sufficient way to handle the trouble. Here's one excerpt from the paper. I will not go through it in detail, but you can perhaps get a general idea of what is going on. The team has reported a military base, and they have given its location as an approximate estimation from the nearest waypoint, so saying something like 200 meters from Victor, whatever. And they themselves have doubts about not having the exact location of the position, such as the GPS coordinates of the position. And when they then receive a message containing "say again" from the net control station, their doubts about the information not being sufficient enough become enforced. Since the "say again" from the net control station is directed to that bit of the report. And the team frames the message, the incoming message from the net control station against their own expectations. And they do not repeat the message, but instead they begin to negotiate what the trouble is and how they should then solve it. And they then finally decide to turn the vehicle around and return to the position for the location, the exact coordinates on the GPS. And the negotiation takes some time. It causes delay in the interaction over radio, but it also causes delay in the patrolling itself, because they actually do turn back and drive back to where they came from. So in training, say again is sometimes treated as having further meanings than just the troubles of hearing or understanding. The trainees occasionally assign a corrective meaning to the expression, which then leads to negotiation, first of what the trouble is, and then how to solve that trouble. Sometimes solving trouble can be more than rewording or rephrasing the radio message, which can then lead to a longer delay in the communication. The teams make sense of the messages and the potential troubles locally within the vehicle, instead of the troubles being handled between the actual parties of the interaction, which would be the person in charge of the radio and the net control station. And the team prioritizes problem solving and sense making over the general progress of the communication over radio. Possibly due to prioritizing learning and to avoiding mistakes later on. They orient to the limitations and affordances of the radio as a medium, considering the limited range of formulations, for instance, and the possibility to negotiate during the ongoing interaction, which is not typically possible in face-to-face situations. And all in all, the teams orient to maintaining efficient communication, even if it means delays in the communication itself. So the corrective meaning is native to an emergence from the training context. And there are certain features in the training that makes in the training context that makes it different from radio communication in real missions or in other kinds of contexts. And one of these features is the presence of evaluation. Even though the training itself doesn't really aim for evaluating the performance of the trainees in this sense, the environment can direct the focus of the trainees to evaluation and criticism. And this can further then lead to trainees to focus on performance instead of, for example, safety, which is the true priority they have in missions and what is the actual thing that they are here training for. The context would then call for attention to and the acknowledgement of the presence of evaluation, and paying attention to the way tasks are outlined and how feedback is given, for instance, and how these troubles are then treated can alleviate, but maybe not completely remove the presence of evaluation. But these could then be used perhaps to turn the trainees' focus to more, in a way, essential objectives instead of their focusing on their own performance. And diverse approaches to handling corrective practices are called for, especially when corrections stem from the training context itself, such as using, say again, as a kind of a pedagogical tool to correct formulations with the intention of teaching the trainees something. That's it for me. Thank you. Over to the next.
Thanks so much, Ira. And I think it's Pentti up next to present the next paper.
Indeed. Thank you. I'm just now working on getting this show. Okay. You see the show view? Okay, great. So, hello everybody. My name is Antti. I'm from the University of Oulu, and I will talk about our paper on perception and team decision making in time-critical situations. And this is also set in the same context of the UN military observer training course that Iira just described, organized by the Finnish Defence Forces International Center. The analysis in the paper focus on a set of 8 video recorded cases from the final patrolling exercise of the course, where each of the teams encounters simulated mine accident. And in this scenario, a UN peacekeeper patrol is portrayed as having driven their car into a minefield and gotten injured in the explosion. So this specific incident was also one of the things the course organizers pointed to us as a potential research interest, as each time many of the teams end up dead in this specific scenario, and the organizers and instructors themselves had no knowledge what actually happens inside the team vehicles before they act on the incident. So the teams approach the site from behind a small hill, so it won't be visible to them until they're very close to the accident site already. So in the image above, you can see what the teams see through their windshield as they approach the incident site. In the collection, the teams interpret the situation in 2 different ways, either as a regular road traffic accident or as a mine explosion, and both of these are plausible based on the visual evidence, but they necessitate very different next lines of action. So the correct procedure in this specific case, and generally when encountering a previously unknown minefield or mines, is to immediately cease all movement, return on your own tracks to a safe distance, usually a minimum of 100 meters, report the incident with the radio, and wait for help to arrive. So 4 of the analyzed teams survived the scenario without casualties, whereas the remaining 4 teams suffered some casualties. And I'll now show you the division of types of team action we made in the paper. So in the first one, the teams that see the situation as it's meant to be seen and act in a correct way, so to say. And this is a total of 4 of 8 teams. So in the second part, then teams that come to the conclusion that they are dealing with road traffic accident and they act correctly according to that, even though that is not the correct situation, of which there are 3 teams. And finally, there's a team that recognizes the danger of the situation, but then there's a loss of shared focus, and as a result, they end up blowing themselves up. So to go through these one by one, let's look at the first set of cases. So in these teams, even though there might be different levels of cooperation in the decision-making among the team members, the end results are nevertheless similar. So in these teams, the team leader is the one to verbalize the initial noticing of the incident site and points to a possible danger posed by the emerging situation. The team leader also explicitly tells the drivers to stop in these cases. And in cases where the driver does not immediately comply, the team leader repeats or upgrades the order until the car is brought to a halt. So once the car is stopped, the team has more time to look around and make sense of what the situation is. And a very important part of this is speaking observations out loud, which gives all the team members the possibility to form a more informed image of what's going on. Once the most relevant feature of the scene, which is the mine markings, have been noticed, they automatically inform through the participants' professional knowledge what to do next, which is to stay put or back up and call for help from a safe distance. The second set of examples depicts cases where the teams
I'm not
quickly...
on call. I'm on a...
Oh, okay. Somebody said, yeah, okay, thank you. Depicts cases where the teams quickly make a diagnosis of the incident on the move, and they begin to plan for and decide upon their actions straight away. So their diagnoses, though, are incorrect in this case, and the teams fail to orient to the fact that they might be in danger themselves. So there are turns of talk in the trainees' interaction that either explicitly state their interpretation of what they see, or ones that refer to some event in their shared past. So all the teams who arrive at the mine accident scene have had an earlier encounter where they've come across this very similar looking incident where their task was to provide first aid to a UN peacekeeper patrol who had been in a car accident. After the initial noticing of the incident, the trainees in both of the teams engage in what I call situation-specific seeing, through which they jointly connect the puzzle pieces and finish the picture. This is just another first aid task. This is not questioned by the others as the pieces seem to fit, and through speaking the observations out loud, they do indeed create a that makes sense to them in the context of both their ongoing and previous activity. So in sum, the observations are made in order to plan for the first aid action rather than for gathering clues on what the situation is, and the diagnosis of the incident are achieved individually by the team members and only then communicated to others. So these examples show how a recent shared experience can have an effect on the team members' individual diagnosis and decisions, and consequently on the whole team's joint perception and decision making. So even though a team functions and communicates well as a team, a jointly formed and non-contested misreading of the situation leads to the teams putting themselves into the blast zone of the anti-personal minds. And finally, in the example with the team who seemed to be in agreement both of the diagnosis and the relevant next action, there was lots of talk orienting to the danger and not getting out of the vehicle or stepping off the road. But then the cooperation and shared focus within the team nevertheless began to crumble once the team leader begins to send a message through the radio. So at this point, all talk between the team leader and the driver is put on hold. After this point, both are occupied with their own projects and the driver began to make their own decisions without consulting or informing the team leader. So what eventually happens was that the driver ended up driving the car next to the accident site anyway. They both exit the car and begin to interview and instruct the victims. And eventually one of the victims crawls onto a landmine and detonates it, resulting in casualties within the team as well. So based on the analysis of how the 8 different teams function at the site, a rough division into phases can be made regarding the decision-making process. So the gathering and processing of information begins at the very first sighting of the incident, which is also the point where the very first interpretation of the scene is made. At this point, the interpretations are quite vague, and they could also be just exclamations, such as the crap, crap, crap you saw before. And as the incident is both sudden and unexpected, the interactions around the initial noticing aim to establish whether or not the situation is an immediate threat to the team's own safety. The initial noticing is then followed by further observation and information processing. At this stage, the team members gather more information on what it is they are seeing. The observation can be done to both make sense of the situation, which can then lead to potential second interpretations, and also to just gather information to plan for the action that they had already based on their first interpretation. Then the final diagnosis and decisions regarding the incident become visible through the team's action, that is, whether they stay at a safe distance and call for help, or whether they approach the scene and start providing first aid to the victims by themselves. So the results of the study carry practical applicability, as they can be used in identifying good interactional practices that can be included as part of crisis management training, as well as to inform the future development and planning of simulations within course exercises. And like I mentioned in the beginning, provide course organizers and instructors insight on the team's actions that they would not get otherwise. The study can be used to highlight to the trainees the importance of stopping to observe and not rushing into interpretations and decisions. The examples of this paper show that the teams that stopped the car right after the initial noticing and took their time to look around managed much better to see what they were meant to be see in order to come to the right conclusion on what's happened. In contrast, then, the teams that were quick to agree first impression and got into the minefield themselves would have benefited from a more critical examination of what they saw. More specific interactional issues that could also be raised in the training include the importance of pursuing compliance for orders by the team leader, as well as the importance of maintaining a shared focus and a shared situational awareness through constant speaking out loud of observations and actions. And interactional research and participant reflection on how decisions are made in time-critical situations can be important not only to the crisis management training organizers, but also to the wider crisis management community, as having a better understanding of how different interactional practices shape and affect action and joint decision-making in a training exercise can improve military observed training and consequently also help create a safer working environment for military observers in real operations. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Antti. And now I think Pentti will share his screen. floor is yours, Pentti.
Thank you, Liz. So I will continue from where Ira and Antti started and continue with the UN military observer setting. One of the most important tasks for UN military observers is to patrol crisis areas in cars and observe, communicate, confirm, and report weapons, troops, vehicles, artillery, and so on that are or could be a violation against ceasefire or peace agreement. And they do this by patrolling crisis areas and inspecting military bases. The members in the teams have different roles and responsibilities, but they're all responsible for observing the environment and noticing things and making observations. And this is also what they train for in the field training exercises. In the exercises, when the trainees are training for this, what they see in the exercise are real weapons, vehicles, artillery, and troops. So when they're practicing these things, they see real things. So for the analysis in this paper, which focuses on noticing suspicious things in the environment, we have used video recordings made inside patrol vehicles during the field training exercises. So the main questions that we're interested in is how do UN military observers communicate a noticed thing, a thing meaning anything that might be suspicious or reportable, to their team members? And when they produce the noticing, what happens in the communication next, and how does it progress the activity of getting more understanding of what they've seen and how that's relevant for their task? So these are the very first moments of noticing something and trying to explore and establish whether this is important, relevant, reportable, and how is it relevant and important for the team. So let's look at first excerpt. I will walk you through these excerpts, so I won't play any video or audio. This is a team of two called Team Zulu, and there's the driver sitting on the left of the frame here, and then the team leader who's sitting on the right. And what's happening is that they are driving near the demilitarized zone, and then the driver notices a flag, so a blue land flag. The driver verbalizes a noticing, saying, "Okay, there is a blue land place here," so indicating that seeing the flag means something, that there may be troops here, or maybe soldiers or something like that. What happens next is that the noticing term prompts the team leader to shift their gaze and to look at the direction where the flag is seen. And then shortly afterwards, the team leader looks down on the map, possibly to check their location and to check whether there should be something here, whether there should be troops here, and then quietly says blue land flag and confirms seeing the same flag. And then what happens after that is important. So they drive silently for 22 seconds and actually don't say anything. So what they're doing is that they're scanning the environment, possibly for something more to see. And then that's what happens. So the team leader notices smoke in the distance and verbalizes that seeing, saying that there's some smoke out there, and the driver confirms that. Let's look at another excerpt. So this is a team of three called Team X-ray. There's the driver on the right here on the first frame, and then the team leader sitting on the left on the front seat passenger seat, and there's also a third member in the back seat. The team leader has just informed the net control station about their whereabouts. Communicated their waypoint and reported that they're moving on to the next one. And what they're now doing is, what they are now doing is that they are waiting for the net control station's response and confirmation. At the same time, the team leader notices a blue land flag in the distance and says silently, blue land. But exactly at the same time, the net control station responds to their previous message confirming the team's location. So saying on line 3, X-ray, Victor 18, Hotel 2 out. And that because of that net control station's message, the team leader stops their turn and stops the noticing action at the same time. The team leader then, just after the net control station's message, looks down at the map on his lab, possibly again to check their location and to check whether there should be troops nearby. And then he raises his gaze, looks at the distance and starts to point towards the flag and says, produces the noticing again, saying there's blue land area. It could be that there are some troops or something else that we have to, and then stops to the turn there. Now this prompts the other team members' attention, and they look ahead of them as well. And then the backseat passenger completes, or the backseat team member completes the team leader's sentence by saying that they have to observe and then possibly verify what they see later on. And also that their task is, if they see troops, they have to get in contact with them. So this is what happens.
Right.
And so what we've seen so far is that the noticing actions, when the team members see something, the noticing actions register the seeing of something suspicious. And at the same time, they invite team members to attend to the scene, item or feature in the environment. They also invite the team to shift the focus to the same thing, for example, from any other activities that they may be engaged in. Very often these noticings also offer candidate understandings of the nature of the seen thing. So how is it relevant for them, for their actions, and possibly what they should do next. And very often these kinds of noticings also communicate uncertainty and unawareness of what they have actually seen, what they have seen. Now, what happens after these noticings then is that another team member confirms the seeing, if they see what the first noticer has seen, and they sometimes verbalize their preparedness to start seeing more, so that they're anticipating that there's more to come, and that this, what they have now seen, is not necessarily important, but it indexes something else. There are also often extended silences, meaning that now the team is focusing on scanning the environment and trying to spot more things to see that may be relevant and important. And importantly, the vehicle continues movement. Now, okay, these features are a practice that help the team to start scanning or monitoring the environment. And what this means that what they've seen it's not treated as something that needs to be reported, but it's indicating that there's something suspicious that they might need to orient to or pay attention to very soon. Let's look at then the last excerpt, which is slightly different. So this is Team X-ray, and again, there are 3 members in the team, so the driver, the team leader, and a team member in the back seat. And they are currently navigating, so they are thinking or trying to establish their current locations and whether they have actually arrived at the next waypoint. So this is what line 2 is saying. So the team leader is saying, so 20 is, and then not yet. So they haven't arrived to their next waypoint yet. Now, what happens at the same time is that they, as you can see on the image, they're driving past a blue land flag, but none of the team members verbalize seeing the flag. So they miss the flag and miss the indication of possible troops in the nearby area. They drive a little bit forward to where you can see on the image there's the road curves to the left. So at that point, the team leader looks to the right and sees something and points at it and says, "Stop, there's a minefield." And immediately after that, gets the team members' attention, and they also start to look to the right, and the driver confirms seeing something by saying, yeah, and anti-tank. And immediately after that, the team leader shifts his attention to the satellite navigator, makes a note about their current whereabouts, so takes the information about their position, and also says grid while he's pressing the navigator. The driver continues to verbalize what they're seeing, so mine, and they continue to sort of verbalize the fact that they need to take their position. And again, the driver is sort of verbalizing what they're seeing in the environment. So verbalizing a heavy anti-tank weapon that they are seeing leaning to a tree. And then the team leader asks the team member in the back seat to start preparing a report of what they've seen. So sort of things escalate very quickly after this noticing. So how is this noticing similar or different from the previous one? So similarly to the first ones, these noticings register the seeing of a feature in the environment. But at the same time, these ones in the collection that we've analyzed, they communicate urgency and need for immediate action. They often also indicate uncertainty and unawareness, in fact, not awareness, unawareness of what they've seen. Very often the noticing terms in these cases are partial or incomplete, which also indicate uncertainty and unawareness. The terms are also often designed, or that they emerge, or they indicate sort of emergent nature of seeing. So as the team members see things, they sort of revise and change their talk to communicate what they're seeing, which happens very quickly. And these kinds of noticings also identify and communicate details about the seen thing. So for example, naming weapons. And what happens after these noticings? I mean, in very quick pace, the team starts to make detailed observations. They check their location, they stop the vehicle, they start sending messages to the net control station, and they start talking about making contact with the troops, which is one of their tasks. They also take photos or talk about taking photos and start to write notes. Sometimes these noticings are also followed by extended sequences in which the joint scene has to be established. So if one teamer is not able to spot or identify what another sees, they really start to work on getting a joint understanding of the same thing. And this way of interacting treats the seen thing as reportable. So this is a practice for seeing for the purposes of making detailed observations, verification, and reporting. So just to sum up, the two communicative practices related to noticing actions, and in one there are cues that show how the participants or the team members treat the situation as requiring monitoring for more things to see. So they're entering a suspicious terrain, but the thing that they see is not reportable. Whereas in the second case, after the noticing, they start to observe things to report. And these practices are important tools to build situational awareness as part of the UN military observers' work, and they are tools for sort of building the environment into profession-specific objects of knowledge. So thank you.